Good morning. My name is Jessica Kramer. For this week's lesson reflection, I'm going to videotape and talk through my background, the overview of the lesson, and my claims and reflections. I'm going to upload this video onto a PowerPoint because along with videotaping myself talking through this lesson, I also have 3 short videos of the teacher performing the lesson, and then I have some copies of student work that I want to share with you. So this is my lesson reflection for Partners in Learning, from dyads to group investigations. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the background for this class. Because I'm an instructional coach, my job is to work with teachers to help better themselves professionally. I'm working with this teacher actually on my action research project, and so she's also agreed to help me work through this class and coach her on some of these different models and then videotape her doing that. So this is a science teacher. She's in her 3rd year teaching. For this class specifically that we did the lesson with is a 9th grade physical science. There are 22 students within this class, 10 female, 12 male. 3 of the students have IEPs and 3 are identified as TAG. The rest are your average students. There's very little ethnical diversity within my school district, and in this class it is 100% Caucasian. There are multiple students in this specific hour that need constant redirection, not behavioral IEPs or anything, but just kids that have trouble staying on task. So this lesson was her introduction to properties of matter. She just started a new unit, and what she was going to do is demonstrate a discrepant event. Her goal was to hook the students and then to have them observe the discrepant event and then come up with questions. Using the Partners in Learning model, students then created questions on their own after viewing the discrepant event. Then in Partners, and then when they're in Partners, they refine their question, and then they did in small groups and again refine their questions, finally back to a whole group discussion. This took about a total of 1.5 class periods being about 44 minutes. I coached her through this model along with the beginning of the scientific inquiry model, using the yes-no questioning. So with the beginning of a new unit and her using the discrepant event, I thought that I would try to morph those 2 together. It seemed to fit the best with her discrepant event by doing the scientific inquiry model. And I had previously coached a 6th grade science teacher on the inquiry model using the yes-no questions, and I wanted to see how it played out in a 9th grade classroom with a different teacher. So that's the background. Overview of the lesson. When the teacher and I were dissecting this model, the Partners in Learning, and co-planning the lesson, I focused in on table 10.1, which is in my book on page 222. I will put a picture of this on my PowerPoint presentation, but this is what we focused the lesson on. The table seemed to me to also speak to the inquiry model as well. And so again, morphing that yes-no question with the Partners in Learning. I have read this chapter multiple times, trying to make sure that this lesson we were using would fit, and still afterwards I'm still not sure. I have some hesitations on whether or not this specific lesson that the teacher and I worked through actually fits with the Partnerships in Learning, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in my values and claims. So the start of the inquiry model was phase 1 in the Partners of Learning. Also, the students encountered a puzzling situation where she put 4 cans a Diet Coke, a Coke, a Monster, and a Sprite, all in a bucket of water. And 2 of those cans floated and 2 of those sank. So that was her discrepant event. Phase 2 was students explore reactions to the situation. So this was the major focus with the Partners in Learning. First, the students did it individually, thinking what was going on with the discrepant event. Then they did it in partners and refined. And then they did it in small groups of 4 and refined. And then again in whole group. And you'll see that lesson taking place in the 3 videos that I'll upload along with this one. Phase 3 is where the model stopped for this lesson. Instead of the students formulating the task and organizing the roles and assignments, the teacher does this. And so then she introduces the term density and then formulates the practice that they're going to do. So I feel like we did the first and second phase with Partners in Learning, and then after that it was more teacher-directed, typical of what science teachers have done in the past. The 3 video clips that I'll include, the first was the yes-no. The second and third were the students working together. I did not get a chance to record the next day lesson when the groups of 2 got into 4 and then rediscussed the top questions as a whole group. My values and claims. To do this model more effectively, the discrepancy event needed to flow into the planning and carrying out of the investigation, and I don't think that happened here. The teacher really could only focus on phase 1 and 2 without changing her entire unit. What I learned is I needed to help her pick a lesson which would flow through all 6 phases over several days. Phase 3 and 4 could have been the students taking one of their top 5 questions and organizing an investigation along with defining the problem and creating roles. I would see doing this in groups of 4. So this lesson just did not fit well with doing all 6 phases or doing all the Partners in Learning well. I felt some discouragement after the lesson on my part. I felt like I did not do this model justice, nor do I feel like I did justice presenting the model to the teacher effectively. I also felt my teacher struggled with the yes-no inquiry part. And looking back, I think I was asking far too much of the teacher at one time, both trying to put the Partners in Learning in effectively and then starting the inquiry model. It was just too much for her to focus in on one lesson. The student work that I'm going to include in this presentation shows some of the group's questions. When the teacher and I reflected on the lesson afterwards, she was pleased with a lot of the questions. And we also reflected we were not sure of a good way to bring the lesson full circle. So we did something with these questions at the beginning, showed them the discrepant event, they worked on questioning, they worked in groups, in partners, then groups of 4. But now what do we do at the end of the lesson or the end of the unit to bring that full circle? My teacher reflected that the questions were good pre-assessment data for her, and she was very focused on trying to have kids ask good questions. I do think adding the Partners in Learning model along with this was just a little too much. I'm going to admit this is not my favorite model so far, I believe because I haven't grasped the big idea or the details. So moving forward, I know that this is one I need to work on to get a better feel for and more comfortable coaching the model.